Hey everyone, welcome back. We are so excited to be doing another Demoground today, focusing on pricing tools. So if you weren't able to join us on Tuesday, this is a session that's backed by popular demand. This is a Phocuswright-battleground-style format, and we're going to have some of our industry's pricing tool providers give us demos about their platform. And then we've got a panel of 4 great judges who are going to ask them all the hard questions and dig into their products and get the answers that y'all are waiting and looking to hear. So let me just give you a little bit of an overview of how this is going to work. We're going to first off intro these judges so you know who you're going to be hearing from. We're then going to put it over to each of the presenters. They'll each have 6 minutes to present their product, followed by 7 minutes of questioning from the judges. So let's kick it off by introducing you to our judges today. So first, from North Carolina, we've got Katie Wheeler, who's the owner services manager at Twitty. We've also got Steve Milo, the founder and CEO of V-Trips. He's got offices all over the country, but Steve, are you in Florida now?
Yes, but we're not in the hurricane belt. That's where Amy is.
Correct. We've also got coming from the West Coast, Betsy Labarge, the owner of Mount Hood Vacation Rentals out in Oregon. Betsy, we're glad that you could join us and glad to see that you're here, that you're safe from everything going on out there. And last but not least, we've got Tim Cafferty, the president of Outer Banks Blue and Sandbridge Blue, also down in North Carolina. So thanks all of you for being here today. Really appreciate your time. Tim was here on Tuesday when we did this, so he's got a little experience. So let's see how this goes. We are going to run a tight schedule, so I'm going to keep you to those time constraints that we talked about. Setting my phone alarm right now, so I will be able to stop those and we'll get going. But without further ado, up first we've got Scott Shatford from AirDNA. Scott, take it away.
Cool, happy to. Thank you. Are you seeing my screen? Yes. Cool.
Yes.
All right, let me expand here. So AirDNA, we really been doing market intelligence for the last 5 years. We are scraping every property on Vrbo and Airbnb on a daily basis, and we are analyzing the daily booking activity from all those the scraping. We have partnerships with channel managers and PMSs for about 750,000 properties, reservation data, and we have some people contributing data via this platform. So you can look up any city in the world, any zip code, neighborhood. We've got about 125,000 markets that you can look at. So we're going to look at Gatlinburg. Like I said, we really are a market intelligence company. We have the details on every single property that is listed on any of those platforms. So you can see what the revenue is, occupancy of all these different properties. You can navigate to the different markets in this area and really understand exactly how these markets are performing on the key metrics like average daily rate, occupancy, revenue, what's the worst month, what's the best month, some really basic high-level overview of the data on those platforms. And so we can see, we are known for understanding the core metrics, which is, ADR, occupancy, revenue generated by these properties. Now, we have built out a lot of functionality that's helping people price. We know from a data perspective, that's the one thing people want to know most about on a daily basis is, my price too high, my price too low? What does my competition look like? What does the seasonality of my market look like? So I'm going to start high level on the market data, and we can go to the, how people are actually using this market data to price their properties. So you can see here's like the seasonality of what Gatlinburg's looked like over the last 12 months. We can see the red are the worst days in terms of daily RevPAR, and green are the best days in terms of daily RevPAR. Been an interesting year, so it might not mirror sort of the normal seasonality of the marketplace, but we can see, that demand picked up in late May, in June, really heavy in July, and we can actually see that July was probably the best month in the history of Gatlinburg, with the average property earning $8,300 in that market across in the entire market for that month. So first off, I think it's really helpful for people to understand seasonality, understand weekend demand versus weekday demand, understand like how much demand is actually coming in for Thanksgiving and Christmas. What day are people arriving? It looks like people aren't really arriving typically until the 20th, while a lot of people already increased the prices before that. So just understanding general seasonality trends is really important. But obviously, when looking at pricing, the future is the most important piece of what's happening for pricing. And so we have this thing called our sort of a pacing report, which looks at what is the demand in the market and what is the supply in the market, how are people pricing. Nice simple example is this top chart. We can see that, you know, next weekend there's already 81% occupancy, 3,000 properties booked, only 700 available. We can see sort of this weekend to weekday demand, and we could see sort of this Thanksgiving holiday coming up. You know, we could see how much more people are pricing. People are pricing $290 for that Thanksgiving week versus $180 for the week before. You can also just look at getting to your individual comp set in some ways, just looking at what are the 3 and 4 bedroom properties doing, how are they performing similarly or different. And so just understanding just basic demand and how people are pricing in relationship to that demand is super, super helpful. You can see just things like after July 2nd, you know, demand falls off a cliff and there's really very little, no booking activity starting at the beginning of the year. Looking at sort of how people are priced, there's lots of different ways to look at this, but we'll look at like what is the booked rate today for the next 6 months versus what it was at the same point in time last year. So you can actually see in Gatlinburg, there's actually a premium this year versus last year. There's higher demand than there was in the last year, and people are pricing their properties 30% higher for Thanksgiving, you know, 25% higher for Christmas, which just gives you a nice indicator of like, you know, what is your pricing power? You know, while people aren't booking as far in advance, they still are, you know, charging a premium, and people are willing to pay a premium in these markets. And then some of this booking trends, like what are people booking right now? What's been booked in the last 7 days in this market? You know, not a whole lot. Looking in the last 30 days, you can see, you know, where they're booking, how many people are actually booking Christmas and Thanksgiving holiday. So we also allow people to upload properties, right? So you can actually come in here, give us an Airbnb listing, upload the properties and see them here, right? And once you've uploaded a property, so these are some of our pricing features. Once you've uploaded this pricing, upload the property, you can set some basic features. What's your minimum daily rate? What do you want to do for some orphan days? And then you can actually go to our rate calendar. So our rate calendars is sort of combining market data and an actual algorithm to create a recommended rate for every single day. So for this sample property, we can see it's booked on these days. We can see it's available for rent on these days. And we can see based off of the market and some trends that you're doing here, right? If you want to see, okay, what is everything on a 2-bedroom basis doing, looking out over the next 6 months, you know, how should I be pricing in comparison to the market? And then we can see what the demand is and a bunch of different stats. As we look at like what an actual recommended rate is, which is an algorithm which has 20 different signals about booking windows and competitors and your comp sets, and really recommending an actual rate for every single day. That's where you can see that here. And you can see future months, if I can get rid of this, and how you should be pricing every single day. We're actually uploading your property, we're looking at what's available, what's blocked, and we're recommending rates for every single day on how to price it perfectly, as they say.
Fantastic. Thank you, Scott. Great job. Let's turn it over. Let's let Tim start this since he was here on Tuesday. Tim, do you want to jump in with some questions for Scott? Oh, Tim, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I was being polite and muted myself. Scott, I got
All right,
a couple of quick ones to answer for you. And so the sourcing of the data, you talked about market data. Is it strictly Airbnb that you're using for data?
It's anything listed on Airbnb, is anything listed on Vrbo, and it's partnerships with 750,000 properties via partnerships with channel managers and PMSs around the world.
Okay, so you actually have professionally managed properties on there as well. Okay, good. And then the other thing that occurred to me is the pacing report when you're looking at demand. Is that based on searches that you're seeing?
Search activity is really hard to get to. I don't think anybody in this space can see search activity. So this would actually be the booked properties, the bookings that are happening over the next 6 months in this report.
Okay, and then one more quick one, because I know we've got 3 other panelists here, and that's, it seems and you can respond to this, it seems sort of reactive on the pacing in that you obviously you're talking about book data, as opposed to, I know, for instance, next year there's a wine festival the third week of August, or there's going to be a big retreat or something like that. Can you comment on how you would anticipate those kinds of events that may not be in the data?
Yeah, so we really think that the events show really well in the data. And so we could see any sort of market, like if you go to Austin or you go to New Orleans, it's pretty clear, and the seasonality chart's typically the best place to see it. Like I could probably spot an event in here. It looks like Gatlinburg doesn't really have that sort of event-driven sort of market, but you can typically see a bunch of green dots or dark green dots and high RevPAR in the last 12 months, which sort of allows you to identify what our markets, like maybe this like spring break time period right here is a good example, a bunch of greens that are popping out from a bunch of reds. You don't need to know exactly what the event is. You just know that there are event drivers and that there's something that you should be responding to on your revenue management.
Okay, thanks, very good.
Yeah.
All right, Katie, you want to go?
So I had a question, and maybe you've already answered this. You said that you're capturing data from professionally managed homes, but are you also capturing data from homeowners that manage individually on their own?
I mean, we really think about we don't really want to track properties unless they are on Airbnb or Vrbo. So if a property, even if we're getting data for some property that's not listed on one of those OTAs, we just don't really have the capabilities to understand it fully enough to report on it. The data is too dirty, it's too ugly, we're not getting it correctly in the format that we need. So we're just focusing on the 10 million properties that are listed on one of those platforms.
But those properties could be listed by an individual homeowner, not necessarily professionally managed. So my question would be, I think this seems really great if you are very active and engaged. What safeguards or what features do you have for those who maybe want to be a little bit more hands-off and don't want to have to look at their recommendations every day?
Yeah, so we're approaching it a little bit differently than everybody else. I mean, we really are focusing on the very actively managed, less than 10 property sort of person who's on our platform. We've got 9,000 of those subscribers across 60 countries across the world, and that really is our core market. Now, we sort of solve the problem in a different way. It's where we white label our solution to companies like a BookingPal or others that can actually use all of our rate recommendations. They can use our API, they can integrate with us, but they would have to use a channel manager or a different platform and sort of white label our technology on the platform. So we don't really solve like that sort of whatever 10 properties to 500 properties as well as people you're going to hear on this demo, but we're sort of solving it in a different way via the channel manager integrations.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Steve or Betsy, who'd like to take on the next line?
I'll go. So
Okay.
one of the things that you mentioned is that your demand is based on booked properties, and you're primarily looking at listings on Airbnb and Vrbo. So how do you know that the property was booked versus blocked for an owner use, maintenance use? In my case, everything in our market for the last 10 days was blocked because we had a fire and smoke, and we couldn't rent places because we didn't have electricity or water. And so how do you account for that? Because that's really not true data.
Yeah, so I mean, this is the problem that we've been solving for over 5 years. And I'll give you the short and sweet answers. We do have reservation data on over 50 million reservations that have happened over the last 5 years. With that information, you can overlay that with your scrape data, and you can sort of validate what is accurate, what is not accurate, what are we getting wrong, where are we getting it wrong, how are different markets behaving, how are different properties behaving. And we're getting it right 93% of the time, any single day is at an actual reservation versus a block day. So this is it's machine learning algorithms. It's something we've been developing for over 5 years to get as accurate as humanly possible using that scrape data informed by that source data. So yeah, we're never going to get 100% correct, but to track 100% of the market 93% accurately, we feel it's the most, we feel like it's a pretty valuable product at this point in time.
I guess I don't understand how you know if that's a paid night or a not a paid night. Maybe you said it and I didn't understand it. Can you explain that again?
Sure, there's lots of different signals you can look at for any particular given set of dates, right? So we know that blockings happen differently. Blockings happen for different booking windows They happen for different properties where we can tell, we have a signal that that's a property that is occupied sometimes by an owner. We have signals about how blockings are different than reservations. And so we know by the booking window, the length of stay, the value of the property, by the number of reviews, the number of properties on that, there's a lot of different ways to use the math magic to sort of decipher what is a blocking versus a reservation.
Okay.
All right, we have about another minute and 15 seconds. Steve, you wanna jump in here?
Yeah, we have 300 properties in this market. So I would ask Scott, why would we want to use your tool set over key data, which gets direct from the source data?
Yeah, and maybe we're not the best product for you, Steve, is because we are a market data company. We're not a business intelligence company for property managers, right? And so what we are helping people do is understand the market, comprehensive market, every property in the market as accurately as possible. We aren't the best solution for somebody that's looking to ingest their data and understand their own data. We believe that should be happening in a PMS or in a different system. We are the market data company, and they are sort of a business intelligence for property manager company, right? We're sort of just solving different needs for different people.
So what you're saying, if you're a large property manager, your tool is probably not the best tool.
Key Data has 100 and 200,000 properties on their platform. We have 10 million properties on their platform. So there's some benefit of understanding the entire platform, right? Every property in the marketplace. And so there's obviously a market intel piece that people are willing to pay $50 a month for to understand.
All right. Okay, well, there we go. Judges, let's go in the reverse order on the next round. And that's going to be with Mark Peckler from Beyond Pricing. While we wait for Mark to jump on, Scott, just wanted to say thanks. That was great. And appreciate you being here and sharing more about what you guys are doing over at AirDNA. Mark, you should be the presenter. Yeah,
yeah. Well, she's switching over. Scott, I also want to say thank you for being a presenting sponsor for this and everything that you did to help us out on the data platform presentations and on Tuesday. And I just appreciate the partnership. Thanks for joining in. I'm sorry we weren't able to do this on Tuesday, but I'm glad you were able to do this today.
It's all good. Thanks for getting me in today, Amy, and always nice working with you.
Okay.
All right, take care, guys.
Thanks, Scott. All right, Mark, we see your screen. We're going to kick it off. You ready?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Sure.
Yep.
All right, great. Well, good afternoon, good morning to everybody. I'm Mark. I'm a senior account executive with Beyond Pricing. We're very excited to be a part of this. And Amy, thank you to you and your staff for inviting us. Let's get right into it, guys. What you're looking at right now is the front dashboard of our system. And the dashboard is essentially a notification system to let you know which properties you should be paying some attention to and which ones you don't need to spend as much time on. On the far left-hand side here, we're able to show you how many bookings each unit has taken over the last 14 days. But we also give you a health score, which essentially lets you know how efficiently and effectively are you pacing against your local market based on your current 30 and 90-day occupancy percentages. Now, for each unit, you'll have the ability to set a minimum price threshold, a rate that we will not go below. And we're able to show you what percentage of the next 90 days are hitting that number. So obviously, if this number is a little too high, probably should bring that minimum down a little bit more to increase your occupancy. We know it's very, very difficult and time and labor intensive to change your prices directly within your PMS. So you can actually go into Beyond Pricing and make an adjustment either by price or by a percentage increment directly from here. We hook up with your property management system and our rates go out to your OTAs. Additionally, for each property, we have additional metrics about booked versus block nights, days that are unavailable, your booking pace since you got started with us, and a whole lot more. We do have the ability to do bulk actions, which I think is really important to talk through. I can go over to the table function. And right now I'm showing that I've got 1,000 listings here, but maybe I only want to price my 3 bedrooms. So I can come over here, click on the 3, and now shows that I have 322 listings. I can check this box, come over here to edit, and now I have the ability to change all 322 listings at one time. Most people don't do it in that high of an increment, but we do give you the ability to do it. So now what I want to do is just go into the tool itself and present a few of our properties. Now, I have 2 properties here. This is a client of ours that is in the Panhandle, and I wanted to show a unit that is in Santa Rosa Beach and one that's in Destin. Reason being is because these are only about 15 to 20 miles apart, but it's very interesting about how we would look at each of those units and price them differently. Right now we're on the calendar function, and the calendar function just allows you to see what our price would look like for you for every single day of the calendar year if you were working with us and your base price and minimum price were set as such. Now, this base price is essentially the average rate that you would get throughout the course of the year for your property. And then we will fluctuate off of that up or down based on seasonality, day of week demand, local events, and holidays. So if I'm just looking at this random Wednesday in the beginning of May, we have a positive seasonality because we're starting to get into a higher season within the panhandle. However, we're looking at a Wednesday, which is why we have a negative factor for our day of week. If I were to then scroll my mouse though over the Saturday of a Memorial Day weekend, notice my seasonality goes from plus 66 to plus 196 because now we are definitely right in the middle of busy season. We've also added an event factor for the holiday, and we're now looking at a Saturday as opposed to a Wednesday, which is why we have a positive factor on the day of week. Now you're probably wondering, how are we getting plus 196, plus 96? Where's that information coming from? It's coming from our market data. And AirDNA talked about this a little bit. We're pulling all of our information directly from Airbnb, Booking.com, Expedia, and Vrbo. We dedupe those property, or we dedupe that list, of course, so we're only working off of one data set. And then essentially what we're trying to do is figure out the hyper-local occupancy of the 150 units closest to yours. We're not comparing bedroom sizes. We're not even comparing prices. We want to know what's booked and blocked around you, so we know if we should be raising or lowering your prices in real time. You'll see right here that we are able to plot the previous 365 days worth of occupancy activity in your market, as well as the next 365 days. So we can see here in Santa Rosa Beach, they're actually pacing ahead for September compared to where they were last year. A ton of our markets were looking this way in June, July, and August, as well as September pacing way higher than 2019 due to the demand, post-pandemic. Well, not post-pandemic, but once governors reopened the states a little bit. So one thing I wanted to point out again, I picked this property in Destin, and I'm going to scroll very quickly between these two tabs, and you'll notice that the graphs are different. Again, these properties are only 15, 20 minutes apart, but I think it's important to outline this because we would look to price these very, very differently because each of these little metrics and markets within the panhandle perform very differently. Next, I want to walk you through nearby listings. Nearby listings is real comp data for you guys. And so ultimately what we're saying here is Bella Vista is a 5-bedroom unit. It's designated by this home right here. And then all these red pins are other 5-bedroom units currently posted on Airbnb near your property. You can come over here to the HomeAway Vrbo logo and see on that OTA as well. For each of these properties, you'll have the ability to see what their average rate is for the next 30 and 90 days, as well as what they're getting booked at over the next 30 and 90 days. We often recommend that our clients use this as an owner acquisition tool. So you can actually just click on the little Airbnb logo within the box. We'll take you directly to that property. And then you can take a look at the pictures of the unit. You can take a look, obviously, at who manages the unit, and then make a determination on whether or not you'd want to reach out to them. I think because we have so many people on the line today, it's loading a little bit slower than usual, but here you go. The next thing I want to talk through is our Customize tab to allow you to set parameters for every one of your units. Now, again, we've already done this and talked about bulk actions, so we can do it for a larger subset of properties. But the three things that I want to focus on are setting min and max prices throughout the year, but most of our clients will do this seasonally as well for high demand periods within their market. Additionally, we take care of minimum stays and can automate this for you. A lot of people like our automated gap filling feature where we can open up all orphan nights and then allow you to set a parameter for the minimum number of nights you would take for a particular orphan stay. Finally, last minute discounts. This is huge because we know how time intensive it is to modify your rates within your PMS as you get closer to the date of stay. You can basically set a rule that's going to all be editable, but this client is saying 14 days out, if they're still vacant, beyond pricing, reduce your price by an additional 10%. Once you're inside of 3 days, if I'm still vacant, make that a 20% discount. Please note, everybody, that last minute discounts don't override.
Oh, Mark, stop it as soon as he heard the buzzer. I like it. Awesome. Okay, so
So polite.
he just immediately was like, and that's it. That's all we're doing. I like it. Let's go in reverse order for the judges. That would mean Steve Milo, you are up.
Yeah, hi, Mark. So is your data scraped from VRBO, Airbnb, Booking?
Yeah, it's scraped data. So we're taking them from Airbnb, Booking.com, Vrbo, and Expedia, and then deduping that list for our final data set.
Why do property managers want to comp their data to rent by owners?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think one of the things that we found, especially over the last 6 to 9 months, is you have a lot more individual superhosts that are just putting their properties online. And property management companies are now really competing against a much larger subset of people. We think it's really important to include those listings. Analogy I always like to use, if I'm on a cul-de-sac with 10 homes and maybe 5 of them are owned by property managers, the other 4 are owned by individual owners, and I'm the 10th, I would still want to know if those 4 individual owners are booked up. Because if I'm the only one of the 10 that isn't booked up, well, I would actually look to increase my price rather than decrease it. So we think it's really important to include those individual hosts as part of our data sets.
Filter them out?
We can do that on the back end. So we have an internal revenue management team that can play around in the back end of our system. They can modify our clusters in terms of where we're picking up properties from. So in terms of data manipulation, we do have the ability to do that in the back end.
What about bad competitors? What about competitors that had cash flow issues and were just liquidating properties to pull in cash flow?
Sure, and I think that's one reason why we don't care about comp properties at all in terms of their price, and we're only looking about whether they're booked or blocked. Because to your point, if somebody's looking to liquidate or if it's a race to the bottom on price, then we don't really want to be in that. Probably you've heard the analogy from maybe some of my teammates over the last few days that if you're just pricing off of comps, it's almost like cheating off of a D student on a test, especially now during COVID, because we know that our historical booking lead time, our historical occupancy, we can kind of throw those metrics out the window a little bit. So I totally, appreciate the question, but I think, in terms of where we are with the pandemic, it makes a lot of sense to include those units and then be able to take them in or out based on the customizations that we can do.
And how is your tool price? Is it a flat rate or is it a percentage of revenue?
Yeah, we think it's really important to be on the same page as our clients. When you guys make money, so do we. So we charge a percentage of revenue. I know some of our competitors choose to do something by listing, and that's totally fair. We have a lot of respect for all of our competition. I think one of the things that was pretty unique, I've been at the company for almost 2 years now, and the first year and a half of my tenure, it was, wow, you guys are charging a percentage of revenue. That seems a little expensive. Then with the pandemic, nobody was making any bookings in April and May, and everybody was like, oh, wow, Mark, I'd like to talk to you again. So it's funny how that all works out, but we want to be incentivized to do well by you so that we're both doing well at the exact same time.
Is it a percentage of revenue that's incremental to your previous year, or is it just a percentage of revenue whether you perform or not?
It's a percentage of revenue, and I think the reason that we do that, and I hope, one of the things I was able to point out today are some of the efficiencies of our tool over and above just giving you a revenue lift. One of the things we didn't have time to go through was our stats and metrics and reporting on each unit. I'm not going to over demo this, but you can find out a lot of information about individual listings as well as your portfolio's performance for both better internal and external communication. Hopefully you also saw some of the efficiencies with not having to adjust rates in the PMS anymore, the seasonal mins, being able to automate your gap fills and last minute discounting, a lot of things that can add to your internal bandwidth.
Last question, why would I pay for your tool at a percentage of revenue when I can use key data and our PMS, either V12 or Trax, and get all of this aspect without paying a percentage of revenue?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will say that a lot of our clients are also using AirDNA or key data. We have a lot of respect for those guys and think they do great work. The thing that I would say is that we provide some data points that they don't. They provide some data points that we don't, but we're an actual pricing tool with internal revenue managers and internal customer success that's modifying your rates day over day. So we don't really look at AirDNA and key data as competitors, more so as partners that our clients can work in conjunction with so that they get the best of both worlds.
Awesome. Great question, Steve. Mark, we're going to have Betsy. You want to get a couple questions for Mark?
Yes, I do. So piggybacking on what Steve said, you commented that you scrape all your data from Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking, and Expedia. And so that means you're not using data from a place like Key Data, which is the real numbers that really happened. And then you also commented that you're not comparing 5 bedrooms based upon amenities. And so in your screen, you showed a place in Santa Rosa, and we know that a 5 bedroom, take out all the other factors, that oceanfront can bring in more money than ocean view versus 5 rows back.
Absolutely.
And so to me, it's really important that you compare 5 bedrooms based on a lot of criteria, including things like location. And we know, for example, in Destin, you could have a big, huge building with a bunch of 1-bedroom condos, and they're all different because every homeowner is decorating differently. Some have upgraded last year and remodeled, some haven't in 20 years. So how do you account for that? Because you are going to have those differences. Your 5-bedroom ocean front is going to bring in more money than your 5-bedroom 5 blocks back.
Oh, no question, Betsy. Totally agree there. And so whenever we bring on new clients, we send all of our listings or all of your listings to our internal revenue management team. So a lot of people on our revenue management team have come over from hotels and airlines, have been doing this a long time. They're going to look at every single one of your properties. They're going to look at what your occupancy has been year over year. You know, what's the average daily rate that you were able to get? One thing we're paying really close attention to is booking lead time and how much less it is this year versus last year. And we're going to come up with base price suggestions for all of your homes. So that means that, you know, you may have 2 5-bedrooms, same square footage, but one has an ocean view and one doesn't. Well, we would look to start that ocean view one with a much higher base price. And one of the things that we have the ability to do is plot how you did last year, both from an average ADR perspective across each month, as well as the max that you were able to charge. So it's a really collaborative process between our internal revenue managers and your team to figure out what the correct base price is for every single price or every single property. But I think it's also important to note that because we're dynamic, we're not keeping the base price the same week over week. If I get 5 bookings in a week, well, I'm probably booking too fast and I'm leaving money on the table. Let's raise the base price. If I haven't gotten any bookings in the last 3 weeks and my forward-looking calendar is pretty empty, may want to lower it. So we never are static with our base prices, but to your question, our revenue managers will look at your historical performance and make suggestions based off of that. You had asked a question about key data. Can you repeat that real quick? I'm sorry.
I just had to unmute myself. Well, why wouldn't you partner with them and use their data? Because if you're just looking at my data from last year, I can do that. I want to know what my competitors are doing, because I can't get inside their PMS or, you know, go ask my competitor, hey, share all your data with me. Whereas when you've got a product like Key Data, which is like Smith Travel Research, it's real data coming in from the actual properties, so you can get a better idea of what is the market rate, what are people willing to pay.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, as I mentioned before, we partner oftentimes with Key Data on joined up clients. And so oftentimes Key Data, or our clients will send their Key Data reports directly to our revenue managers so they can help set the base prices. Again, I don't look at Key Data or AirDNA as competition. I look at them as partners that we can work together to help our clients out. So oftentimes our clients will say, hey, look, you know, you've got some great data on the market at large, but I'd like to get maybe a little bit more defined. And I think this Key Data stuff is really interesting. Please take a look at it as we go through our next base price review. So that's something that we do all the time.
We only have about 25 more seconds for questions. Tim or Sarah, we're going to start with you on the next one, but either one of you have a question for Mark?
I do. First of all, kudos, Mark, for doing a live demo. Takes kahunas to rely on the internet.
Appreciate it, Tim.
You didn't talk about health score. What's health score?
Yeah, so let's just go back there real quick to the dashboard. As I mentioned before, the health score is letting you know how efficiently are you pacing compared to the market at large. And so ultimately, we're giving you a health score out of 100. But as you can see here, and let's actually sort by the ones that have the best health scores. This one has a 97 health score. The reason for that is their 30-day occupancy and booked percentage is 53%, 17% 90 days. If we look at what is currently going on in the market for Inlet Beach, that's the second column from the left, we're comparing how the market is performing to how you are performing in real time. If you are right on pace, we give you a really high health score, but if you're pacing too fast or too low or too slow, we'll lower that health score so you can take action on it.
Cool.
All right. Katie, we did not get to your question this round, but we're going to have you kick it off next time. Thank you, Mark. We are moving over to PriceLabs, and Oliver, I am going to make you, Oliver is already on here. He's ready. I love it. Amy, actually, can you make Oliver the presenter?
I can if he tells me how to pronounce his last name.
Marzinski. A few too many letters gets everyone every time.
Listen, I was like, I'm not touching it. I get him wrong all the time. And as somebody whose name always gets incorrectly mispronounced, not doing it. All right, Oliver, you ready?
I'm ready to go. Can everyone hear me okay?
Let's do it.
Alrighty, perfect. All right, everyone, thanks so much for having me on today. My name is Oliver Marzinski. I do a lot of business development here at PriceLabs, and today we'll just talk about PriceLabs, how we do pricing, and then also how we do stay restrictions here, since that's a big part of what we do. So first and foremost, PriceLabs is built for professional property managers, and you'll definitely see that in the kind of combination of both human control and automation that we provide. So with professional property management, you definitely do not want to set your rates on autopilot. There's a lot of human aspect. You never want to give up full control. So our goal is essentially to make manual adjustments as easy as possible. optimize your rates based off of the data that we're seeing for your area, but then also let you pull any levers to make those rates fit whatever pricing strategies or trends that you're seeing within your internal data here. So on the automated pricing side of things, all listings start off with a base price, which is essentially the price level. We'll estimate that for you when you're first getting started with PriceLabs, based off of where you've been priced historically and what your historic occupancy has been for each of your listings. Onto that, we apply all of our market data, which, similar to Beyond Pricing, we gathered from Airbnb, Booking.com, and soon to be VRBO and HomeAway, so that we can extract all the trends for things like seasonality, day of week adjustments, lead time, holidays and events, and then apply these different trends that we see to your pricing to give you this pricing calendar that is optimized for each kind of upcoming day in the calendar. So we're constantly re-scraping that data. We're seeing what changes have happened in the market, and then we're updating this calendar on a daily basis to make sure all of these trends are up to date with what's going on around you. Now, that's the first kind of automated side of what we do. The second side revolves around giving you as much access to market data as possible to really paint a holistic picture of what's going on in your market. Very important, especially with COVID now, that the trends are so different than what most property managers are used to seeing this time of year. So feeding you trends on what's happening with lead time, length of stay, future pricing, different weekly and monthly discounts, so you can kind of internalize that, and based off of all of this data, come up with your own pricing strategies that you want to implement on top of the prices that we're recommending. So what that would look like is, for each of your listings, you have these customizations on the left-hand side here, where you can adjust everything from last-minute prices. We'll go over dynamic minimum stays in a second. You can pull the levers on day of week adjustments, different minimums for far out dates, different seasonal pricing, different pacing pricing that you want to be implementing to make sure you're kind of optimized on what's going on here. Now, for minimum stay updates, this is a big selling point of the product here, where you, of course, have your standard minimum stay. You can then decrease your minimum stay for last minute bookings, increase your minimum stay for far out bookings to really capture all segments of the markets that might be booking. So people who are booking holidays, different weddings, family reunions way far out in advance require longer minimum stays from those people. And then last minute travelers, of course, decrease that minimum stay to make sure that your property shows up to who's booking. Of course, automated gap fillers with that too. Now, of course, managing all of this listing by listing, that would be a headache. So if you are someone who likes going listing by listing, we do offer a multi-calendar view where you can see all of the pricing for all of your properties on one page, make adjustments to any of that pricing, set different listing level customizations, and so on, just to make sure that you're not waiting for those calendars to refresh. You have everything in front of you at once, compare those rates and all that. Additionally, you can make all of these adjustments, set all of these pricing strategies on the group level as well. So for example, your cabins and villas, those are definitely going to have different pricing strategies associated with them than, for example, your condos and apartments. So setting up different groups makes it so that you only have to make the changes in one place here, and then all of these changes would apply to any listings within that group. Same thing goes for overrides. So for example, if you want to set different minimums for your holidays, different minimums for different events, different minimums for different cities, you can set it once in this calendar here, and that would apply to all listings within that group. So really focusing on those bulk updates as much as possible here. So the power really comes by letting you implement those pricing strategies, so you essentially become the brain behind the system. We can go into things such as adjusting your pricing based off of the pacing of individual listings or individual groups within your portfolio here. So if you're, of course, pacing a little slower than expected, drop your rates, faster than expected, increase your rates, and you have full control over these pricing strategies that you're setting. Now, We are available in all markets around the world. Wherever there are kind of Airbnb listings around you, we're able to price your properties. And additionally, before we end here, I just wanted to put our pricing structure up for everyone to see. We do go off more of that flat rate per listing instead of that percentage of revenue. We think of ourselves more as a pricing tool that you use to optimize your rates. So therefore, since you are just running the tool, just a flat fee to use that tool per listing here. And I think that brings us right to 6 minutes.
Yep, you are. Yeah, you got a couple more seconds, but you're good. Okay, great job. Katie, we didn't get to your question last time for Beyond Pricing, but I'm going to go ahead and start it and kick it over to you.
Thank you. I had a question. We're seeing more and more folks booking further in advance. How far out and how reliable are your projections into the future for pricing, let's say a year out?
Definitely. So all of our pricing that's looking at kind of forward-looking data, we're using that to identify all those high demand periods where more people might be making reservations. So what we've done is essentially made it so that a small change in demand far out triggers a larger change in pricing. So let's say we see a small 3% uptick a year from now in occupancy for your area, we would provide a bigger change in price. And then as we get closer to that date, if that date is still booking out at a higher rate, we would kind of maintain that higher price there. So event detection ends up being pretty accurate up to a year in advance. We can price further out in advance, but then event detection definitely deteriorates a little bit here.
And do you have any way to track how accurate your pricing and predictions were? You know, if you recommend a rate, what percentage of the time does it end up booking at that rate? Do you have any data that allows the property manager to track that accuracy?
Definitely. So we have internal metrics in terms of kind of the accuracy of our data. But for property managers in particular, what they're typically referring to are these 7, 30, and 60-day kind of vacancy calendars. So this is giving you an idea of what percentage of your upcoming dates are currently booked out so that you can make adjustments to your pricing based off of what's going on. So we typically recommend that property managers log in at least on a weekly basis so you're hands-on with your pricing and able to react to whatever is coming up, whether those are kind of unbooked dates in your calendar or different holidays that are seeing bookings. So definitely kind of keeping an eye on that and adjusting as you go here.
And you have 7, 30, and 60-day increments. Do you have increments that go further out than that?
Yep, you can totally adjust these based off of whatever your booking window is. So if you're a super last minute market, you can make this, let's say 3, 7, and 14, or if you're super far out, you could go 30, 60, 120, however you want to structure that here.
Thank you.
Tim, you wanna jump in?
Sure. All right, Oliver, first of all, kudos to you for the nice background. I appreciate the bird feeder over your shoulder there. We're looking at some wildlife presentation. One quick logistics thing. When you're looking at a calendar and I saw green dates and I saw blue dates. Can you give me a quick rundown what that meant?
Yep, so we're color coding here based off of market demand. So green dates would be anything that's kind of normal demand, and then the darker the date gets here, that's higher and higher market demand. So dates with stronger market demand, of course, associated with higher prices, and you can see that kind of in that neighborhood occupancy at the top of that square there.
Okay, I'll let Steve hammer you on why we should choose you, but I wanted to know about any success story that comes to mind with us going through the curve in April with COVID. Some of our markets shut down completely and then opened up like a fire hose. How were you able to anticipate that? And do you remember any success stories you can share with us, not giving names, of course, about how your product performed?
Definitely lots of success stories. So a lot of our product is based off of the internal pacing of your listings. So we had lots of new users come in during the pandemic where they were like, hey, we're seeing that the market is at least 40% full, but we're sitting completely empty. They would turn on PriceLabs. We would see, hey, you're, sitting completely empty, we would drop rates a little bit to kind of match where the market was getting bookings, and then they, kind of skyrocketed here. With that, when bookings started kind of really picking up for those summer months, we have a lot of tools that are kind of focused around the actual pacing of your units here. So these occupancy-based adjustments, for example. As owners started getting more and more bookings, we would of course start increasing their prices. So if they were priced a little too low for the upcoming summer, that kind of went like crazy, we would automatically increase their rates, make sure they're not leaving money on the table, and kind of optimizing that way here.
Very good, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Betsy, you want to take a stab?
So I guess I'm still going to comment that you're not getting real data. You're getting this scraped data from the OTAs, which concerns me. But also for, I think to piggyback on Tim's question, so this year it was crazy. We were closed for a couple months in the spring. When we reopened mid-May, all of a sudden in a couple of weeks, we saw all of our bookings just increase like crazy for summer. I had dropped my minimum night stays and my rates thinking, oh, we're not going to have a summer. And as soon as I saw we were, I bumped everything back up. And so that was hard for everybody, because how do you predict that? That was an unprecedented world pandemic that affected everyone. And then we fast forward to, in my market 10 days ago, we had a mini event of forest fires. Our power was out. We had no water in most places. We still have really high smoke in the air, so nobody wants to come. They're all trying to cancel. And now we're looking at how do we forecast for the next few weeks until we get back to normal. How do you, for these crazy events that occur, or like the hurricanes right now in the Southeast, how do you forecast how somebody rebounds when we don't really know when properties will be back on board? When will the water recede or the smoke go away, or whatever it is that's keeping people from wanting to book?
Definitely. So with kind of these anomaly events, we definitely recommend that you're keeping a very close eye on that market data. That's why we're trying to provide you as much kind of ongoing booking data as possible to let you know who's booking, how far in advance people are booking, what minimum stays are getting booked, so that you can optimize your properties for those trends. We even go into things like weekly and monthly discounts, just to make sure that you're kind of on top of the game and your trends are really set to what people are booking here. With that, since these are such anomalies, like, smoke, just not being able to book, we do recommend at times like these that people do make manual adjustments. So again, we're just trying to make that manual adjustment process as easy as possible. So you could, for example, say, hey, for this set of properties, take the next week and, for example, decrease prices by 30%. Add that in, and now that override is updated for all of your properties. So if demand is lower due to smoke, you can immediately kind of put that in. That will sync over to your PMS and get distributed to all the OTAs. So when you do have to go in and make a manual change, it's super easy in the system here.
Thank you.
Tim, we have about 45 seconds. Gosh, Steve, 45 seconds. You have a question for Oliver.
Yeah, Oliver, question here. I'm a large enterprise level property manager. We're using key data, which is significantly less than the price that you quoted, and they have source data. So they actually have property management data that's at the source, which gives us past and historical data as well as future booking trends. And we're on an enterprise level system. We're on V12 now, and we're about to go to tracks. It has all of the price controls, plus it has a Google rate importer where we can literally import and export data back and forth. Why should we use your tool and pay the amount of money that you're indicating? Why would a company like us use your tool?
Definitely. So we do have a lot of customers coming our way from enterprise systems such as Track. Their main benefit, so a lot of those customers are additionally using key data just to get a good outlook of what's going on in the market. For them, a lot of the benefit is in the automation of setting rates. So kind of all of these rules for having your minimum stays update, for having your prices update based off of the pacing of individual listings and the pacing of your portfolio, different seasonal rates. That's kind of the bread and butter. So we'll have a lot of professional revenue managers. So companies that have already been doing revenue management manually move to us specifically for this rule-based approach that just makes it easier to implement these changes and have these changes update on an ongoing basis here.
What do you say to someone like me who says comping against rent by owners and bad competitors who have cash flow issues or just reckless with their pricing is like following lemmings off the cliff? What would you tell me about that?
Definitely. So with that,
10
again, we are
seconds,
not
Oliver.
price. Are we at time?
You get 10 seconds.
Okay, so we're not price matching against the competition. When we're looking at market data, it's all looking at future and past occupancies and when things get booked out. So we're never saying, hey, these people are dropping their rates like crazy, let's drop our rates. We're saying, hey, this is what's going on in the market with occupancies as a whole here.
All right, awesome. So many great questions. Listen, we're gonna thank you, Oliver. Nice job. We're gonna push over to Cliff Johnson with Rented. And as we do that, I just want to make two quick notes. One is that I do see some questions coming in to the question panel. If time allows, we can go back and ask those folks that. And then also that's about it. So Cliff, are you ready?
I'm ready to go.
All right, let's do it.
All right, thanks. That teed it up nicely. Cliff Johnson with Rented. Happy to be a sponsor for this event. It's been great so far. We actually partner with PriceLabs and Key Data, just to kind of throw that out there up front. We work with PriceLabs to utilize our APIs and push our rates into about 18 different systems that we work directly with. And we also work with Key Data to use their data. So just as that's been kind of a common theme and question throughout this, we see that there isn't one solution out there that gets you to the right answer on pricing. And to the other side of that, we also see a need for a lot of manual intervention because the data is not strong enough in our industry to automate decisions fully. So well, I like to start with our results because that is what people ask us about. I mean, we're not the cheapest thing out there. We're $39 per property. We're a revenue management service. So unlike we've looked at pure softwares up until now, we have a very manual component to what we do. We have a team of senior revenue managers that execute on pricing. But we do deliver, we see that there's incremental revenue out there to be made. We deliver an average increase of over 30%. ROI is a big question because our cost, our price point at $39 per property per month is not the cheapest. People ask us, well, how do they determine if we're worth it? And to Steve's point earlier on one of the questions, it's not about total revenue, it's about incremental revenue. So we measure our ROI on the incremental net revenue that we drive you. And then just kind of that last point, sorry, that was in the way, is that we save people time. So the big thing is you have to put the time in. So if you're not putting the time in, you're not maximizing revenue. The only way we can maximize your revenue is to put the time in. And just kind of our philosophy in general, you need to blend art and science. Manual intervention on pricing might be a stretch as far as the definition of art, but we see it as one. It's really taking the best of the information available to you, using advanced models that we built to help inform a closer answer to the right answer for pricing. We have a data science team that has developed some really awesome models to cluster different units together to use for setting that rate. But we also think that expert attention is the most critical piece, making sure that you have somebody that knows what they're doing, reviewing those prices and executing on those manual changes on a daily basis. So in practice, and I gave Key Data their credit for the slides because we do partner with them. We pay for the cost of PriceLabs and Key Data as part of our service. So it's not, there's no add-on fees or anything. And we use that data. So when we first bring a property on, we're plugging in a Key Data, we're analyzing each of the properties that we're going to be pricing for you to see how that's performed historically, but also how it's pacing, looking ahead, and where there's opportunities for improvement for that specific property. We're always going to do demand-based pricing at the end of the day. I mean, there's no other way that people should be pricing. You're going to have constraints to that, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're maximizing revenue for each specific property that you're trusting us with. And so, you know, the way we do that, we build out a custom comp set. We automate as much of it as we can, but then we filter the bad data out. There's been a lot of questions around, you know, are we using owner data, homeowners that are not sophisticated? And the short answer is we filter out 90% of the listings out there because they're just not that useful. It's useful looking at the total occupancy for the market, but not relevant to how you should price your property, because most of the market is not a true comp and it's not priced correctly to begin with. So getting that custom comp set, that cohort, is really key to success. Pricing and practice, these are our tools. These are our internal tools. We do have a beta available right now for people who are DIY and want to use our tools themselves. So we are adjusting that. But this feeds our model into basically the interface that we use to make manual adjustments and then push into PriceLabs and so on. So really, we want to look at, you know, what is that market ADR for your comp set? What's market demand for that? What do we want to override in there? Some of this we might automate. Some of this we might do manual overrides on. So it allows us a lot of flexibility, but we try to keep it clean and really focused on those high-level details. And then the key is we look at, you know, it's really the work is in monitoring the performance on a daily basis and making sure you're making those adjustments. And so we want to see, you know, how does this property, so the base rate is just the start of it for us. Like that helps you identify, you know, where the property sits within the market. But if you have a really high-end property, like a 12-bedroom home in Aspen, for example, that's going to have a lot of sensitivity to seasonality. And so you might want to price that extremely high during periods of high demand, such as Christmas. But midweek and beginning of October, that property is actually going to be more price sensitive than a one-bedroom condo, because there's less demand for high-end properties on odd dates or something like that. So we allow you to kind of adjust for the property. The other one is also, like, when you have a new property, you know, we hear this all the time. You want to go out and collect reviews, so you might price it aggressively. You don't want to change your base rate. You still want to make sure your base rate's in line with the true comp set, but you do want to go aggressive early on to capture those conversions and get those reviews in. And so we allow you to kind of balance that, both for the specific property needs, but also for owner needs. If you have those owners who view it more as asset management and they want to keep the minimums higher, you might, you know, make it to where your goal is to really earn a higher ADR as opposed to filling the calendar. So that's what something, you know, tools where we're using on the back end. But as much as we use those tools on the back end, we're still using our senior revenue managers to make the final call on every price for every day. I'm going to buzz through these case studies because I think I'm running close to time. But this is just to give you an example of no client is the same and no property is the same. So what they want to measure is different. And so we really tailor our product and our service to fit the needs of the manager, and we view it as a partnership with you. I hear it going off. So, and if you want to sneak peek, we do have the pricing tool beta under works now. So,
Thank
all right,
you,
guess I'm ready for questions.
All right, you ready? Betsy, why don't
Yeah.
you go first? I want everybody to have a chance to be first. So we'll let you kick this one off.
Okay, so hate to be beating up my friends. Consider Cliff a friend, but here we go.
All right.
So you and all the others have talked about how it requires manual intervention. So yeah, why wouldn't I just use my PMS and the rate tools that are available there? If I'm going to be jumping in every day and having to do a bunch of work to figure out pricing, and I'm going to be looking at my key data or actually looking at my actual competitors, why would I also pay you or anybody, any of these companies, when I'm already doing a ton of manual?
Yeah, so I totally blew my pitch then, because we do all that for you. The point is that we replace the need for a revenue manager. So our senior revenue managers make all the pricing changes. You don't have to monitor it. You don't have to change anything. We're doing that work for you. So that's what you're paying us for. So you could hire an internal revenue manager to do that work, or you can do it yourself, or you can hire us and we're going to do it for you. But we're not just trusting an algorithm or a tool or anything. We have senior revenue managers that have experience in the industry that are making those changes on a daily basis.
And then one other question that I kind of want to know from everybody, but how do you and any of the companies figure out events, and how do you price differently for events for any individual market? it sounds like the only way everybody does it is says, oh, we noticed that on January 15th through the 20th, there are more bookings at higher rates. There must be an event. But sometimes we know about events locally that you can't tell unless, because we know a music festival or whatever.
No, 100%. Actually, I think it's a really good point to bring up. And the answer is, it is manual. Like, you want to price higher before the event is announced. I mean, because as soon as the event's announced, let's take Coachella, for example. As soon as the dates are announced, even before the bands are announced or anything, people book. So they look for the properties that are underpriced and book them. And a good example for you is like Hood to Coast. And Hood to Coast impacts multiple markets, but predominantly Seaside, Oregon. But it has an effect on everything in a 30-mile radius, because Seaside runs out of housing, and then there's a surge in demand in each direction. So this is not something you can automate. It's something you have to understand the market. And for us, we don't pretend we're the expert on your market. Instead, we work with you on your market and say, hey, here's what we've caught. Is there anything in addition to that that we're missing? And that seasonality curve that I showed is a really good way to look at it, where it shows you where your base rate is, where your mins are, and where the peaks are, because those peaks should show with the events that we've caught. And then we'll go over that before we go live with a manager to say, you know, are there any other events that are missing from this data where it feels like we're off? Yeah, that's a really good point, though. I mean, there are things you just can't cache in data still. And so you always need that blend.
Great. Katie, you have any questions for Cliff?
Yes, my question that I have is similar to the one I asked the last person as well, is how well are you able and how far out can you project pricing?
We do it for 2 years for every property that we have. Managers don't always display 2 years ahead, but we want to make sure that we have it ready to go, so that in the event that, well, we have a lot of markets where people do weddings and things like that. So we want to have pricing in advance for those dates, and also look to see if there is something, like to Betsy's point, you know, if there is a surge coming up because an event's been announced 2 years from now or a year and a half from now or something, we can start capturing that in the data ahead of time. And so that helps feed into the model as a whole. And then we're tracking pacing longer. I mean, there's not a lot of activity happening beyond a year period in most markets, but you're in the Outer Banks, which is a little different. People love to book far in advance in the Outer Banks. So that's where you really do need that customized strategy, because having those longer booking windows available can be critical in some markets, especially usually as you move up market and the type of home.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Steve or Tim, questions for Cliff? Who wants to go next?
I've got a couple of bullet ones. I'll let Steve bring it home for us. So Cliff, first of all, congratulations for Rented being on the Inc. 5000 list. I think you came in at number 61 this year of the fastest growing companies in the country. Congratulations on that. You work with only professional managers, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so no individual homeowners get this advantage then. That's good.
Yeah, it's a lot of work for not a lot of money, to be honest.
Right, exactly. And then, so can you tell us how many clients you have?
Yeah, so we have about 70 managers working with us now in the full service model.
Fantastic. And then again, with that full service model, is there, I must hear like an assumption that you would need to have a revenue manager on staff to justify this, which I don't. And so I'm scared of the price.
No, you don't. We really replace it, but the nice thing is we work either way. For example, we have some clients that have 1,000 properties that have revenue managers and they're growing quickly, and they need us to supplement that because they just don't have capacity, and they don't want to just go out and hire anybody. Because as we know, like all of you know this, like this is a skill set that there's not a bunch of people out there that just have it and you can go with. You have to train people. So I think our secret sauce is we've gotten a great team that knows what they're doing with very market type experience, and then we have to apply that to the customized market on that.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, Cliff, did you say your tool set and consulting fee was $40 per property per month or per year?
Per month. And that includes the cost of key data and PriceLabs and the person, the senior revenue manager. So essentially what you're buying is a part-time employee for a subset of your units. I
could buy 10 employees for that.
You can. I don't know. I'd argue whether or not you can buy the right ones. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about the net. And can we give you an ROI? If we can't give you ROI, you shouldn't hire us. If you can hire somebody better and train them internally, then you should do that. But if you're a manager with 50 properties, are you going to hire a full-time revenue manager? Probably not. I would say most people at the scale that you have, Steve, will have an internal team. And so somebody at that scale is probably going to use us for a supplemental segment of their inventory, which might be more of the higher end stuff. Because if we can drive incremental revenue on 10-bedroom homes, then we pay for ourselves all day. And it all comes down to incremental revenue. To your point earlier, like it's not just, and that's why we like the per unit pricing model as opposed to percentage based. It's either we're covering our costs and adding, incremental revenue to you or not. If we're not, you get rid of us because we're month to month.
We don't have anyone who's a revenue manager in our company. We use key data, we use V12, we use tracks, and we're going to be more profitable this year than last year. We're going to do double our profitability for the second half of this year versus last year. So I'm just extremely skeptical of the value here on these tools. So on this
my
cost.
Question would be, does anybody change prices in your company though? Because
it would cost us over $1 million to utilize this service based on this pricing.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the question would then be, is there more than $1 million in incremental net revenues for your company available? Because if you don't have anybody doing it, is it all being automated? Is all your pricing being automated, or do you have staff members making pricing changes? So it's a matter of the time savings of whatever staff you have dedicated to it, plus the incremental revenue you can add to it. But it's something like I'm always up for the challenge. I mean, and it's not always going to be the right answer. Like if somebody has a lot of inventory that's on the lower end of the market and they're already pretty well optimized, there's not much more to squeeze off of that, So it's probably not worth it to hire us on those. But on the higher end inventory that's not currently optimized, there's always room there.
Well, Cliff, you rendered Steve Milo speechless there for a second. And I have seen Steve present for the last 12 years.
We've got a few minutes. I wanted to say, Corinne, you have been a superstar pitching in during this hurricane. My gratitude to you is off the roof. I can't imagine how much Sauvignon Blanc this is going to cost me, but I know it's going to be substantial. I'm so grateful you've done so well. There's not a team in this industry that wouldn't be lucky to have you. Although I do think Jeremy needs to pay you more. So that being said, I think that Rented, Beyond Pricing, PriceLabs, and AirDNA were all the presenting sponsors of this conference, as they were last time too. And as we hope we'll be able to get together in person. I think this conference is incredibly valuable for how we're looking at things going forward. I think what we're learning, especially getting texts throughout the conference from Steve Milo, is that we still have a long way to go. You know what I mean? This whole idea of optimizing revenue for profitability is fairly new. I think it's going to be interesting to see how there are a lot of hoteliers on this conference right now. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens next year. But I wanted to ask you guys, there was a session yesterday that obviously I missed, but it was about talking to homeowners about pricing. Historically, when I was working at Kaiser back in 2009, we had contracts with homeowners and they allowed us to discount up to 25% without having to ask them. And that was pretty much the way our contracts were laid out. I mean, starting with you, Tim, you've been in this for a while, not trying to say you're old, but like, how have your contracts changed with your homeowners and how are you communicating with them about this stuff?
Well, I think this year is particularly different, Amy, in the sense that you're right. Yield management 15 years ago was, can I drop your price? And now it's, can I raise your price? And so you need to have that talk, particularly with all these new owners coming to market. I don't think the Outer Banks is unique to this. I'm sure Katie's experienced. We've had a huge influx of new buyers who we have to train. And there's nothing like being able to train an owner from the start that this is how we do business and you need to trust me as your partner. And so it has changed quite a bit. And we do have that unilateral ability for many of our owners. There are still some that we have to check with though.
Betsy, how are you handling this? You've got a really good relationship with each of your owners.
Well, it's kind of interesting. From day one, I always had contracts that said I get to create the price. And so I've had a lot of flexibility with that. I will tell you though, in the last few years, so many homeowners, because of the visibility with Airbnb and Vrbo, they think they know more than I do. And they want to tell me, and they look at something on Airbnb or they look at something on our website and they go, I think my house should be priced like this. And so it does take a lot of education because it's all of those little nuances that I mentioned earlier. A 5-bedroom is not a 5-bedroom is not a 5-bedroom. Every single one is different. And we specialize in cabins in the woods. I have one condo and the rest are all cabins. And so there's no two alike. And it makes it really difficult to, you would have to educate homeowners why your place is not the same as that other one. And this is why it should be priced this way. And also the dynamic pricing, some of them get kind of freaked out because somebody books a Tuesday, Wednesday night and it's priced a lot lower than Friday, Saturday. But when I started getting more aggressive with reducing rates midweek, because we're not like a 7-night like the Outer Banks, we're 2 to 5 night minimums. They were freaking out, but it's like, hey, you wouldn't have gotten that last year at all because we were pricing it like the weekend. So you actually got more revenue this week because we booked 5 nights, even though 2 of them were lower. Overall, we got more nights for you, but it does take a lot of educating of why we're doing it. And calm down, it'll be okay.
I mean, it's so unique to have you. I mean, I just can't imagine where this would be from an owner service level. I mean, Katie, you're the person that's responsible for talking to all these homeowners in your team. I mean, how are you educating your rental managers to even talk to these homeowners about things like pricing?
One at a time. I mean, I think, you have some homeowners, like Tim said, you had some that give you full authority and they trust you and they let you make those decisions just based on your tenure and, the level of expertise. And then some want to be really hands-on. And so while these presentations were going on, one of the questions I thought to myself was, how would each of these programs take into account those varying levels of homeowner involvement? Whether you have a really high risk tolerance or you're super conservative, if you're giving your property manager full authority to make the decision, or if it's something we have to call you for every 5% increment. So it's just, it's been a lot different, but I think we've also been really lucky that the Outer Banks has been so popular. So we are able to have conversations now about increasing rates rather than decreasing them.
Your ADRs over the last 4 years are shocking to me. I mean, I mean, I'm sure, Cliff, you're in the same boat. When you look market to market and what the Outer Banks has been able to do on rate is an anomaly across the vacation rental industry. It stands out. Like it just must be the most popular destination on the planet right now. Steve, you're in multi-markets, multiple homeowners. I mean, at your scale, do you just go ahead and all your contracts just give you the flexibility to change pricing?
Well, it starts with your owner contract. So our owner contract gives us the ability to have decision over rates. I think from a practical standpoint, there's a communication at each office level with the owners of the property about flexibility. But we've talked about this, and hopefully next year you have some of the PMS companies on as well, because we're working with Trax literally on taking the automation of price decisions to the owner portal, and then creating rate adjustments from taking data from a source like key data, floating it back to the owners and asking them for decision making within 60 days. And I mean, I think that's the combination we're looking for, where we automate the process, we get buy-in from the owners if they want to, and they have a probability of the likelihood of them continuing to book based on the current price, versus giving them suggestions on additional pricing. I just am trying to make sure property managers are, frugal with their money. I mean, this should have been a wake-up call, COVID, where some of them probably didn't even know if they'd still be in business today. Don't go out and just spend your money on tools unless you actually know what the ROI truly is, and be careful. I don't have a revenue manager. I'm using Key Data. It's a relatively inexpensive tool, and I'm using my PMS. If I can do that and I can achieve the level of profitability we are, then everyone else can do that as well.
I think it was funny. Andrew McConnell was on a call with Heather Bayer on one of her podcasts, and she was telling him that she was so excited because everything opened up, and she booked the entire summer within 2 weeks. And Andrew's like, you booked your whole summer in 2 weeks? Like, you may have left some money on the table if you did that. Cliff, how far away are we from having any best practices on pricing strategies in the vacation rental industry?
I think we have some. It's just a matter of the best practice is to customize it based on the market for the property that you're pricing. So, which is time intensive, right? So I think everybody's looking for quick solutions, and there's not one. I mean, there's a quick solution to the 80-20 answer, so you can get 80% of the way there through automation on some properties, but it's a matter of like, where are you really delivering value to your owners? If you're in a market that's really competitive and owners care a lot about the revenue they're getting off their property, then you have to stay at the top of your game there and invest the time in making adjustments for their property specifically, and not just sitting back and saying, well, my portfolio is doing okay, so I'm not worried about these 20 properties that are struggling.
Well, that makes sense. So we do have a session coming up with Cliff in a little bit about in-source versus outsource. It's the whole idea about what you can do in-house versus when it's time to actually hire someone to do it on the outside. You guys, thank you so much. I love this whole format. This is so fun. It's more fun in person, but it's still fun online. I was hoping it would work. Tim, thank you again for doing it twice, pulling double duty. It was super fun to work with you and Sarah in person. When's your next podcast dropping?
We'll be dropping one on Monday.
What is it?
We are going to interview each other about the status of vacation rentals right now, what the market and so. Yeah.
I'm excited. If you guys aren't watching that, listen to that. You need to. It's the best thing in the industry. All right, you guys. Thank you so much. We'll see you in 30 minutes to talk about merchandising. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you soon. Steve, Betsy, thank you. And Corinne, you're a superstar. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Have a great afternoon.